I'm Norman Liss in white gloves, and you'll see why in a moment. Inviting you to join me on my program. This is The Way to Go, about places to go and things to do. We're going to great exhibits today, and you can find all about them. A little contrast, and I think that you're going to enjoy what we do. But first, before we get into the program and I introduce my guest, I first want to open up this little Pandora's box I have here and show you some things that we're going to learn more about. Very unusual. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know what it is. I'm wearing the white gloves because actually not supposed to touch things from a museum. And so Laura Vookles, who is the, what's your title, Laura?
Curator of Collections
at the
Hudson River Museum
in Yonkers, and Yvonne Borrelli, who is education coordinator, involved in two very, very interesting exhibits. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but the two interesting exhibits, one is called Say Ah, and the other one is called On the Home Front. They're quite different than what you normally would see in a museum, Laura. What's the concept behind the two of them? We'll get into details in a few minutes. While I take off my gloves, you can talk.
All right. Well, it depends on how you look at it. Both exhibits are history exhibits primarily, and the museum does have a long history of doing history exhibits. Our mission is to examine art, history, and culture in America. And some of these exhibits, like our Croton Aqueduct and Railroad shows, we've organized ourselves. Say Ah actually comes to us from the Strong Museum in Rochester, and we've taken a number of their exhibits. And it really looks at the history of health and medicine in America, but also makes you take a look at how we perceive these things and take care of ourselves today.
But it's very interactive. I mean, here's an interesting subject, health. For a museum to present an exhibit, it's not very cold. It's not just some posters that are put up on the wall. Let's talk about what's in there. And we've got some illustrations that we'll be able to show on them. What does the exhibit consist of?
Well, there are a lot of interactive stations because the exhibit wants to involve the audience and really make you think about what this topic means to you. And that's what I like about it. It's not just a dry recounting of history in America. All the questions are pertinent today. It examines risk, what people thought was risky and why, and if they were right, what they did to prevent these risks, how they tried to cure them if the preventions didn't work, and what you're responsible for, which today people are very interested in.
Very interested in, and not presented dryly. Now, this particular illustration that we have here is what?
Well, every section of the exhibit has one of these stations. It starts out with a wheel, which is sort of a play on a wheel of fortune, that risk and medicine is sometimes has been just a spin of the wheel, whether or not you got well or got sick. And it introduces various themes that are played out in the objects that are shown. This is the section on risk. It has a number of objects like furniture with heavy upholstery that trapped dust and germs, things that people thought were dangerous, tight lacing of corsets, that type of stuff.
And what else? I mean, the instruments are shown. Awful lot of instruments are shown.
Awful lot of instruments, because one of the main tenets of the exhibit is, even though these questions about health are universal and still around today, we have more ability today to take care of ourselves because doctors understand more what made us sick. In the past, they didn't understand what made you have a fever, and so the cures couldn't be very specific and they couldn't be very useful. One example that's my favorite in the exhibit is what happened to poor George Washington. He had a fever at the end of his life, and the doctors were looking at the medieval concept that if you had a fever, it meant you had too much blood. So they bled him and bled him, trying to bring down his fever till half of his blood was gone. Then they blistered his arms because they thought if you had too much congestion, you needed to be sweated. And by the time he was about to die, the poor man said, "Please let me go in peace."
This was after he was president?
Yes, at the end of his life. And basically, he may have died from whatever illness he had, but he was hurried along by his treatment.
Worse than the cure.
Yes, and there was no understanding of what was making you sick, and so some of the treatments were very unspecific.
I'll come back to the medicine and say which is a wonderful title for it. But I do want to talk, Yvonne, about the other exhibit there, which is back on the home front. Meaning what?
On the home front takes a look at, examines everyday life in an American household during the Second World War. And it was a wonderful collaboration between museum staff and 8th grade students from our neighboring Museum Junior High School. They interviewed and heard lectures from a variety of guest speakers who talked about everything from wartime propaganda to vintage clothing to battles and weapons manufacturing.
I think it's fascinating that the junior high school students planned and researched and put this thing together. It's an era that they may not even know anything about because it's so long ago for them. Of course, there are some of us who see it in a different way. We see it nostalgic because it was a time that we lived through. And it brings off, I think for the older population, it's a great exhibit to remind people of what's going on. Some of the things that were happening, women into the workforce, for example.
Right.
World War II was the time it happened. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Rosie the Riveter is famous, and we do have an illustration of some women at work during World War II.
Actually, this image is from one of the Yonkers factories, the Alexander Smith carpet mills, and this is a victory lineup. And these women were tie-in workers who were working with the duck, which is a very heavy, sturdy cotton or linen cloth. And Alexander Smith was recognized and received 4 Army-Navy E Awards for their excellence.
Alexander Smith in Yonkers.
In Yonkers.
Of course, yes. Right. I don't think that people realize how much sacrifice was done. I don't think people realize how much the American public at home had to give up during the war. There were so many shortages, and even cigarettes. I remember a slogan, "Lucky Strike Green has gone to war."
To white, and they changed the color.
They had to change the color because they just couldn't use the material. People don't realize that. I think that, of course, as people who were involved called it the big one.
Right. Well, we have a wonderful section on rationing, and the exhibit is set up in a way that they are vignettes of an everyday household. So you start out in the living room, you then go to a boys' room, over to the kitchen, and you learn all about rationing and salvaging and your point system and ration books, and it's a wonderful experience.
What were the kids' reaction to it?
Well, we had 7 students who worked on this project with us, and it was part of their social studies curriculum, a look at World War II. And this was a lot of new information for them that they truly enjoyed, and they really put together the overview of this.
I'm sure you're getting a lot of visitors who lived through the time, as I did, and kind of reaction are you getting from them? Here's a contrast between the youngsters, to whom it's history, and to the older people to whom it's memories.
And reminiscing, and we have a wonderful area just about as you exit the exhibit where you can sit down and you can recollect on your memories during the war.
I have to admit I did that.
You did do it. Great. Maybe yours is hanging up there on the wall, but people do sit down and reminisce and write down their recollections, and I think that's a wonderful way to get the public involved within the exhibit, and that's where it becomes interactive.
I know the museum has a ongoing senior citizens program. I'm sure for the groups who come regularly to the museum, it must be terrific to see this exhibit. I mean, it's really our time, our era, they might say.
They just had a wonderful program for the senior in the arts. We had Penny Coleman, who wrote the book Rosie the Riveter. And she had come in and she gave a wonderful slide presentation to them, and they loved it. We also have a Sunday family program coming up on May 31st, and it will be a guided tour of the exhibit with an educator in costume dress.
That's great. You know, when you talk about different locations when they're in the sites, coming back to the Say Ah exhibit, and of course they're both going on together. The timing is Say Ah continues through May 24th, and on the home front is through June 14th. One of the things that I like, health is, of course, got a lot to do with relaxation.
Exactly.
And you've got an area set up there with exercise mats. Go ahead, why don't you talk about that?
Well, a lot of times when we take an exhibit from another museum, we like to think of putting our own spin on it. And we have those wonderful windows looking out on the river where we often walk through the galleries and take a moment to meditate on that beautiful scene. So we set up a whole area of mats with some figures stenciled on the walls illustrating yoga positions, and it's adjoining the section on the exhibit that talks about how much of health is your responsibility to take good care of yourself, to exercise, not to smoke, not to drink excessively. And people can just come over there, and there's literature that came with the exhibit so they can read more about health and about the topics. There's literature especially for children, there's games, and it's just a whole family area where people can take a break and think about what they've seen or just enjoy the view.
And sit in beanbag chairs.
Exactly. They're actually giant pillows.
Are
They're
they?
wonderful, yes.
Quite comfortable.
I have to admit, I didn't try it. I wasn't so concerned about sitting it. I was more concerned about getting out of it.
Well, more exercise, maybe.
That's like someone once said, I'm not afraid of flying, I'm afraid of crashing. So it's not so much, the aftermath is what's involved. You talked before about medicine changing, and one of the things that I think is interesting is phrenology.
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting point, and how do you illustrate that? And let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, they have a phrenology bust in the exhibit. I think you have a picture of it there. Phrenology was a supposed science, and there's a lot of quackery examples in the exhibit. They believed that the shape of your head had something to do with what was going on in your brain and what kind of a person you were. So it's not so much medicine, it's sort of pop psychology. They might decide that if you had a bump in a certain place, it meant you had a criminal propensities. And it was wildly popular in the 19th century, and even after they found out it wasn't really true, people used to do it maybe just for fun at parties. And one of the sculptures in the museum in the mansion is by Hiram Powers, and he believed in phrenology and would often think about having a fine shape to someone's head in the sculpture that was based on this theory. He didn't want you to style your hair in such a way to accentuate base personality traits that might be revealed in a phrenological terms.
I learned recently that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the famous Sherlock Holmes creator, was one of the strongest proponents of it, and had almost a lifelong controversy with Harry Houdini, who started out as a friend and then opposed him, and eventually they were no longer friends because of his belief in phrenology.
Well, there's been so many theories that people had over the years that didn't really have any basis. The device you showed at the beginning is a battery for giving yourself electric charges. And when
I knew you'd get to that.
When batteries and electricity were first invented, of course they thought it might have medical benefits. And there are, I guess, some medical benefits, but not to using a battery to give yourself little electric shocks at home.
Well, even today, some of the theories of medicine are changing, and some of the things that people believed in 50, 100 years ago, and these go back to 1800s, don't they?
Well, there's a whole section called cause becomes cure, or They have a section talking about sunlight. In the 19th century, people tried to stay out of it. Then they realized you didn't get enough vitamin D if you stayed out of it, and people thought it was healthy to have a tan. Now we're swinging back in the other direction and staying out of the sun and using sunscreen. Most of the patent medicines were filled with alcohol, cocaine, and opium.
And of course, there were a lot of charlatans who took advantage of the fears of people and
Yes.
and did certain things. The patent medicines, some people made a fortune on patent medicines.
Yes, and then they were patently not useful.
A lot of them were just water with some.
Well, yeah, opium. It made you feel a lot better.
Whatever is in there.
Yeah.
I just want to switch back to the home front again. What does it do for you, both of you actually, not having experienced World War II, as some of us did, to get into a subject such as this? Does it give you a different perspective? It's not just reviewing art that that was created a long time ago, but this is a time that people were living. I know when I went through, a lot of memories were brought into my mind about things that people didn't do. Air raid wardens, for example, bomb shelters, all of these things that were part of life. Gas rationing, butter rationing. I mean, all the things, oleo instead of butter.
Oleo.
But how does it feel to see it? Does it open up a new vista for you?
Well, for me personally, I think I always had a very strong interest in it because my father served in the Second World War. My mother also worked in a factory sewing together the fingers on gloves for the soldiers. So growing up, I was exposed to the oral histories of that era. And now in professional work for me, having to focus on this project and now learn more about it and share it with his children, it's been a wonderful experience. And it really lets me take a look at my own day-to-day life and the time in which I'm living and make some comparisons and contrast to that time.
Does it, the color, maybe both of you can speak to this, when you realize how tough times were then, they were really difficult, does it make today's pressures less?
To some extent. I mean, it makes you realize that you really have it good and that, maybe we take things a little bit too much for granted. I mean, going back to what Yvonne said, I think that the important thing about World War II is that people are still around that experienced it, people to talk to. And that's really the key for getting yourself into understanding a topic. When it's further back, like the 19th century, you have to read first-hand accounts or whatever. But we have such a rich resource of people still around that were involved that we can learn from and talk to.
And I think one thing I learned from a lot of the guest speakers and peoples who lived during that time is that they never again had experienced that sense of community, that sense of spirit where everyone got together, pitched in, and did something for the war effort. I don't know if we'll ever have that camaraderie like that again.
I think you're right. I think the world has changed considerably, and war was always evil, but there was a common enemy that people could accept, and I don't think that's existed since then in Vietnam or Korea or any of these little so-called
Gulf
wars,
War, right.
wherever they're not called wars anymore, and they're just involvement. But the community, everybody was together in that, and everybody joined in, and the blackouts, which of course you cover there, and it's amazing that Times Square was blacked out above a certain level, so that it wouldn't provide an outline for enemy ships that may have been in the water. I want to get into some of that and some of SEA as well, but I do want to remind our viewers that we're talking today about two exhibits at the Hudson River Museum, and my guest today, Laura Vookles, who is the curator of collections. Laura, I got it right that time, at the museum, and is responsible to a great extent about the SEA exhibit, and also Yvonne Borrelli, who is education coordinator and the point person on the exhibit on the home front. Before I go on, I just want to talk a little bit. People know on that I've talked about a cabaret performer, who I just happened to see last night. His name is Mark Nadler, and he's at Sardi's Thursday nights from 8:30 till 12:30, and he's everywhere else. He's been at a Rizzoli bookstore in New York's been doing a series of cabaret evenings, afternoons actually at 1 o'clock, and Mark was there. He's also appears with a terrific cabaret singer at, her name is Terry Lynn Paul, and she's at 88's, one of the best cabaret outlets in New York City. Really terrific singer. Cabaret is wonderful. People who watch the show regularly know that I enjoy cabaret. I see a lot of it. There are a lot of things happening. It's a great form of entertainment, and I suggest that you look into it. You might like it. Back to the home front and feeling good about ourselves. What's the best way to see these exhibits when you come to the museum? They're in two separate areas, of course.
Both of them are located in the lower main gallery of the main building, and which are adjacent to each other. And you can self-guide through these exhibits. There are plenty of people available if you do have questions pertaining to a particular area or focus of each show, and the staff is always on hand to assist.
What I like about the Hudson River Museum is that it's big enough to have extensive exhibits and small enough so that you can see everything without getting what someone taught me a long time ago was called museum feet.
Right.
Which means standing around too long and getting too tired and then not appreciating anything. Some of the larger museums that I frequent, you just can't take them except in small bites because there's too much to see. I think the Hudson River Museum is really unique, unusual, and a great place to go to. Before we go any further, I want to make sure that our viewers will be able to have a telephone number that they can call to get further information. And what is that number, Laura?
Sure, it's 914-963-4550.
And we'll put that up in the closing credits as well. People can call and get on the mailing list, and there's some wonderful material that's mailed out regularly that keeps people informed.
Right, they can also keep up to date on the Sunday programs that we have to go along with the exhibits.
And talking about Sunday programs, let's not forget the bookstore.
True, the Red Grooms bookstore
Grooms
is always open when the museum's open.
And there are many wonderful items right now that reflect the focus of both of these exhibits. Things for children, wonderful warplanes, and wonderful books on Americans and their health.
And of course the planetarium, and which is again unique for Westchester, and it's a great planetarium. And Friday nights, of course, is a free night.
It's a free show to the public. We're actually highlighting a new show this spring. It's called The 9 Planets, and it's appropriate for children grade level 3 and up.
3 and up.
Grade level 3 and up.
It's a great place. As I've always said, a great place to go to. Say Ah. I want to get back to Say Ah. Let's talk about some of the interactive parts of it. I know you have some video as well, and even, you have the Three Stooges, don't you?
Right. There's a video kiosk that it's just a fun element of the exhibit. It has a lot of film clips and television clips that show how fascinated the film industry has been with the idea of doctors and medicine. And you can pick a topic and push a button, and it'll show you a clip that's appropriate to that topic. But the Three Stooges is always on as the default.
Putting on exhibits of this nature are not easy, and corporate support is very important, isn't it?
Yes, at the museum, Bayer, who are based in Tarrytown, funded our showing of Say Ah, and of course, the invention of aspirin, which could control fever, was one of the key, inventions of about 100 years ago. So it's very appropriate that they've sponsored it.
Do you cover the fact that aspirin, which was a trade name, became a generic name?
Not particularly, but there is a case in the exhibit about some of the history of their accomplishments that's been added for our showing.
Without corporate support, a lot of the things that happen, not only in museums, but in all of the arts, would never be able to happen. Certainly, much of theater has corporate support, and performing arts centers certainly it's critical because unfortunately admissions do not pay enough because of the high cost of doing things.
No, really, going to a museum is one of the most inexpensive outings a family can choose to do. And there's also a lot of federal and government funding that the museum gets. The war exhibit was sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts.
Right.
What are the hours at the museum?
The hours are Wednesday to Sunday, 12 to 5, but also on Friday nights, starting May 1st, will be open till 9.
Friday nights.
Friday nights till 9, beginning in May.
It's kind of one of my favorite times to go. I mean, it's a time that's a lot of people there, and I know during the week there's a lot of school children there, and but the night's kind of a family time. I have found in my experience.
Well, the sunsets are spectacular too.
Yeah,
you could bring a picnic and
go out in the courtyard.
Out to Trevor Park or the courtyard.
Just because of my own involvement, I want to get some more into on the home front. In all of the settings, in the room settings that you have, the kitchen, the living room, what is the most meaningful to you? What did you arrive at and say, gee, I didn't know that, or I'd like to have been living in that time, or maybe I'm glad I wasn't living in that time?
I think for me, because I love music and theater, the living room is probably my favorite, because a visitor can come into the living room, sit back and recline in the big club chair and listen to the Andrews Sisters, a little bit of the big band, program advertisements. You could even hear an air raid drill every 10 minutes go off. So I think for me, where I could sit back and sort of let that seep in, sort of the popular culture of the day, I enjoy.
You get transported.
Back in time. It's definitely a journey in time for me.
I have to say that if you live through it, that you have to go back and go back several times and see that exhibit, because you can just spend so much time and absorb so much, and it'll evoke so many memories, and I really recommend that people who did live through that era really know about it. And having lived through this television program, I tell you that we've run out of time. Thank you both for coming here. It's really been terrific you to come and talk about Say Ah and On the Home Front at the Hudson River Museum. Two great exhibits. I'm Norman Liss. The name of this program is The Way to Go. We've been talking about the Hudson River Museum and their great exhibits. I suggest that you make sure that you get there. You'll enjoy it. And I'm Norman Liss. Until next week, enjoy yourself.